In the middle of a raging snowstorm, a war veteran and his loyal dog stumbled upon two officers bleeding and half buried in the snow. What he did next was more than instinct. It was a choice that would shock the entire town and reveal a story no one expected. Snow fell in heavy sheets, piling high across the narrow trail that wound its way toward the veteran's small cabin. Each gust rattled the shutters, reminding him just how merciless winter could be. Inside, the fire crackled softly, casting shadows on walls lined with old photos and medals. The veteran, broad-shouldered despite his years, sat polishing his boots, while his German shepherd lay at his feet. The dog's ears twitched with every groan of the storm, eyes sharp, as though sensing the night carried more than just snow. For the veteran, nights like this were routine, quiet, disciplined, predictable. Yet something in the storm felt different, unsettled, as if it were dragging secrets through the trees. And soon, both he and his loyal companion would step into a night that would test them more than any battle ever had. The storm raged on, but the dog suddenly lifted his head, ears stiff, nose twitching at something beyond the cabin walls. A low growl rumbled in his chest before he darted toward the door. The veteran frowned, pulling on his heavy coat and grabbing a lantern. "What is it, boy?" he muttered as he followed. Snow stung his face as he stepped outside, the wind tearing at his coat. The shepherd bounded ahead, paws sinking deep into the drifts, barking with urgency. The veteran trudged after him, lantern light swaying wildly against the curtain of white. Then, just beyond a cluster of trees, he saw it, dark shapes half buried in snow. His heart lurched as he drew closer. Two men, sprawled against a tree, their uniforms barely visible beneath the frost. Blood streaked their faces, their bodies unmoving. The veteran dropped to his knees, brushing snow away with frantic hands. These weren't strangers, they were officers, and they were barely clinging to life. The veteran pressed his fingers to the first officer's neck. A faint pulse throbbed. Beneath icy skin, weak and unsteady. His lips were blue, breath shallow. Every exhale leaving a fragile mist in the air. The second officer stirred faintly, groaning as his head lolled to one side. Blood streaked down from a wound hidden beneath his hairline, staining the snow crimson. The shepherd circled anxiously, barking and whining, as though urging the veteran to act faster. The old soldier's mind sharpened, instincts from years on battlefields roaring back to life. He studied their injuries, noting broken skin, bruised ribs, and the telltale sluggishness of hypothermia already setting in. Time was merciless here. In this storm, minutes meant the difference between life and death. The veteran's breath hitched, his jaw tightening with resolve. He couldn't call for help. There was no signal in these woods. It was just him, his dog, and two broken men who needed saving. And failure was not an option. The veteran exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his shaking hands. He had patched wounds on battlefields with less than this. He could do it again. Pulling off his gloves, he tore strips from his own undershirt, pressing them firmly against the bleeding officer's head. The snow soaked crimson, but the bleeding slowed. "Stay with me," he muttered, his voice steady, commanding, the same tone he once used with young soldiers. The shepherd stood guard, ears pricked, eyes scanning the storm as if he understood his master was now in combat again. Only the enemy this time was death itself. The second officer's breath faltered, his body limp. The veteran rubbed his chest, forcing circulation back into his frozen limbs, then covered him with his own coat. "No one's dying on my watch," he growled through clenched teeth. His mind raced. He had to move them, get them to warmth. But dragging two grown men through a storm? It was nearly impossible. Still, he knew impossibility never stopped a soldier. The veteran tightened his grip under the first officer's arm, dragging him upright with a grunt. Snow clung to every fold of his coat, each step sinking knee-deep into the drifts. The storm screamed in his ears, erasing the world beyond the lantern's flicker. His dog stayed close, darting ahead, barking encouragement, then circling back to nudge the fallen men forward. The second officer stirred weakly, groaning in pain as the veteran shifted him across his shoulders. The weight pressed heavy, threatening to buckle his aging knees. Still, he trudged on, his breath coming in ragged bursts, eyes fixed on the faint outline of his cabin through the blizzard. Every step felt like war all over again. Body failing, heart pounding, survival hanging by a thread. Yet the shepherd pressed forward faithfully, guiding him through the white chaos. Together, man and dog pulled the injured officers inch by inch toward salvation, refusing to surrender to the storm's merciless grip. The cabin door burst open with a heavy shove, spilling snow onto the wooden floor. Walter dragged the first officer inside, muscles screaming in protest, before rushing back into the storm for the second. With the shepherd guiding him, he hauled the man over the threshold, then slammed the door shut against the blizzard's roar. The room filled with frantic movement. Walter stripped away frozen coats and boots, laying the officers near the fire. He piled blankets over them, his hands working quickly, rubbing warmth back into their lifeless limbs. The shepherd lay close, pressing his body against the weakest one, lending what heat he could. Walter brewed broth from the last of his food, spooning it carefully between blue lips, coaxing shallow swallows. Slowly, their breathing steadied, color returning faintly to their faces. Exhausted, Walter sank back against the wall, chest heaving. He glanced at his loyal companion, whose eyes glowed steady in the firelight. Together, they had wrestled life back from the storm's grip. Hours passed before one of the officers stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. Walter leaned forward, offering a sip of warm broth. The man's voice was hoarse, but his words carried a weight that silenced the room. It wasn't the storm, he whispered. We were ambushed. The second officer groaned, clutching his side as he forced himself to speak. Locals we thought we could trust, they turned on us. We were carrying evidence, proof of corruption. They didn't want it reaching the station. His eyes darkened with fear, not from the memory of violence, but from the knowledge that their attackers still roamed free. Walter's jaw tightened, his war-hardened instincts sparking alive once more. He had seen betrayal before, on foreign soil, but this was here, in his own town. The shepherd growled softly, pacing the room as though sensing the danger was far from over. Walter looked from the officers to the storm outside. Saving their lives had been only the beginning. The real battle was waiting in the shadows of the town they all thought they knew. By morning, the storm began to ease. Walter lit signal fires on the ridge, his shepherd standing tall beside him. Hours later, search parties arrived, stunned to find the missing officers alive in Walter's cabin. Word spread quickly. An old veteran and his dog had saved them from certain death at the hospital. The officers gave their full statements. Names were revealed, and the town reeled at the truth. Men they had trusted were involved in corruption and betrayal. Shock turned to outrage, and soon the arrests began. The evidence, preserved thanks to the officers' determination, brought justice where silence had nearly won. The townspeople gathered outside Walter's cabin days later, not to mourn but to thank. Neighbors who once saw him as a recluse now looked at him with reverence. Reporters asked how he found the strength. Walter only smiled faintly, resting a hand on his shepherd's head. I didn't do it alone, he said. He led me through. The image of the grizzled soldier and his loyal dog spread across headlines. To the town, they were more than heroes. They were proof that courage and loyalty could still change everything.